There comes a moment in every life when you realize peace isn't taken from you. You give it away. You give it away each time you say yes, when your heart whispers no. Each time you let someone's chaos enter your calm. Each time you keep quiet when your soul screams for stillness. Most people spend their entire lives searching for peace, as if it were buried somewhere in the mountains, hidden behind temples, or sold in books written by the wise. But peace isn't something you find, it's something you protect, and the weapon that guards it is a boundary. Boundaries are misunderstood. To the world they look like walls. To the wise they are gates. Gates that decide what enters and what stays outside the temple of your mind. But the truth is, we weren't raised to protect our peace. We were raised to please, to make others comfortable, to blend in, to carry the emotional weight of those who refuse to carry their own. We mistake kindness for compliance and love for surrender. You might have noticed it, the exhaustion that follows certain conversations, the anxiety that builds before you meet someone, the emptiness that lingers after giving too much of yourself away. That is not fatigue from effort. That is the soul's quiet protest, its way of saying, stop letting everyone in. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They didn't call it boundaries. They called it discipline of assent, the discipline to choose which thoughts, emotions, and people deserve entry into your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't mean we should isolate ourselves. He meant we should guard the gate. That gate is your attention, your time, your energy. Look closely at the patterns in your life. How many of your problems began because you couldn't say no? How many times did you stay silent to keep the peace, only to find you had lost your own? Boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. And the first sign that you need them is when you start resenting the people you once loved freely. Because resentment is not born from hatred, it's born from overextension, from saying yes to everyone except yourself. You see, peace is not passive, it's active defense, it's awareness in motion. Every time you allow disrespect, neglect, or unnecessary drama, you trade your serenity for temporary acceptance. The Stoics would call that a poor bargain. Seneca once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere," and he was right. When you give yourself to everything, you belong to nothing, not even to yourself. It's easy to think boundaries make you cold, that they push people away, but what they truly do is reveal who deserves to stay, because those who value your peace will never demand you to destroy it for them. The modern world romanticizes being available to every message, every opinion, every emotional storm. But the Stoic path is different. It asks you to be present, not available, to give fully when you choose to, not when guilt commands you. So, take a quiet moment and look at your life like a philosopher. Ask yourself, who drains my energy without giving meaning in return? What situations make me compromise my calm? Which habits invite chaos into my day? This reflection is the first step of Stoic awareness, to see without judgment, but not without clarity. Every philosopher, warrior, and thinker who walked the Stoic path knew this truth: a man without boundaries is a city without walls. Anyone can enter, anyone can conquer, and soon nothing sacred remains inside. Boundaries do not make you selfish. They make your peace sustainable. They allow love to breathe instead of suffocate. They remind the world and yourself that your time, your energy, and your focus are sacred currency. So, the next time your heart hesitates before saying yes, listen to it. That hesitation is wisdom disguised as discomfort. It is your inner Stoic reminding you that every act of self-preservation is an act of self-respect. You don't protect your peace by hiding, you protect it by deciding. And that decision begins now. The Stoics never used the word boundaries, but they lived by them more deeply than most modern men ever will. To them, life was a fortress of the mind. Everything that enters, every emotion, every influence, every opinion, either strengthens the walls or weakens them. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, spent his life surrounded by noise, politics, betrayal, war, endless requests. Yet in his private writings, he returned to one phrase again and again: "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That was his boundary, not against people, but against disturbance. The Stoic boundary isn't physical, it's spiritual. It is the line that separates what belongs to you from what doesn't. Your thoughts, your reactions, your effort, that's within your walls. Everything else, the opinions of others, their judgments, their moods, belongs outside. Epictetus, born a slave and later one of the greatest Stoic teachers, taught this truth simply: some things are up to us and some things are not. To live without peace, he said, is to confuse the two. You see, boundaries are not merely about people. They are about perception. Every time you let an external event decide your inner state, you've allowed the world to trespass the gates of your mind. When someone disrespects you, you have two choices: react and give them control, or remain centered and keep your power. The Stoic doesn't react to protect his ego. He restrains himself to protect his peace. To modern eyes, restraint looks like weakness. But to the wise, it's the highest form of strength. Anyone can explode. Few can stay calm in the fire. That calmness, unmoved by insult or chaos, is the invisible wall that Stoicism builds around the soul. Think about it. The moment you let anger rule you, you hand your freedom to another. The moment you need validation to feel worthy, you surrender your control. And the moment you measure your worth by someone else's comfort, you've already crossed your own boundary. The Stoics didn't ask you to shut people out. They asked you to master the art of letting things pass through you without becoming you. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Boundaries are tested through adversity. They are not built in silence, but in storms. Every challenge, every insult, every betrayal, it's a test of your walls. Do you stand or do you crumble? Modern life constantly tempts you to crumble. Endless noise, notifications, opinions screaming from every direction. Everyone wants a piece of your attention, and attention is the gatekeeper of peace. This is why Stoicism feels more relevant today than ever. It's not ancient philosophy, it's modern armor. It teaches you to build invisible boundaries between you and the chaos of the world, not to escape life, but to move through it untouched. Imagine walking through your day like a Roman soldier, silent, composed, clear. People talk, you listen, but don't absorb. They project fear, you offer calm. They provoke, you observe. That is Stoicism in action. Boundaries not as defense, but as discipline. To protect your peace, you must first define your circle of control. What's outside of it does not deserve your emotional reaction. And what's inside it, your thoughts, your focus, your choices, deserves your full presence. The moment you begin to live this way, you will feel a shift. The same chaos will surround you, but it will no longer reach you. You will see noise, but not hear it. You will see offense, but not take it. You will see storms, but feel the stillness within. That stillness, that is peace. And it cannot be found by chasing comfort. It's earned by building boundaries. So the next time you feel pulled by every demand, every emotion, every urgency, pause. Step back into your fortress. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Most of what burdens you was never yours to hold in the first place. When you begin to see that clearly, you begin to live as the Stoics did, untouched by noise, anchored in silence, guarded by invisible walls built from wisdom. That is the Stoic truth of boundaries. To protect your peace, you must learn what truly belongs to you. You understand the truth now that peace demands protection. But knowing it is one thing, living it, that's another battle entirely, because every time you try to protect your peace, something inside you resists. You feel the quiet pull of guilt, of fear, of wanting to please. You don't want to disappoint anyone. You don't want to be misunderstood. You don't want to seem selfish, so you keep saying yes when your soul whispers no. You keep giving when your energy is empty. You keep explaining yourself to people who never listen, and every time you do, you chip away at your own strength. You begin to confuse kindness with compliance, love with sacrifice, peace with avoidance. You tell yourself, it's fine, I can handle it. But slowly, you begin to fade, not all at once, but piece by piece. Your joy dulls, your focus blurs, your inner fire dims into a quiet exhaustion that no one sees but you. This is the silent suffering of the kind-hearted, the slow erosion of self under the weight of unspoken expectations. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But the truth is, you forget this power every time you let someone else define how you should live. We live in a world that rewards loudness. Everyone demands your attention, your friends, your family, your phone, your work. And when you finally try to withdraw, to breathe, you feel like you're abandoning them. You're not. You're returning to yourself. The conflict lies in the conditioning. From a young age, you were taught that good people never disappoint others, that saying no is rude, that taking time for yourself is selfish. But the Stoics would tell you the opposite. They would say that to live without boundaries is to live without virtue, because if you cannot guard your peace, you cannot offer peace to anyone else. Epictetus taught that freedom is not the absence of duty, but the presence of self-command. You can't command yourself if you're ruled by guilt. And guilt is a powerful prison. It makes you responsible for everyone's feelings but your own. It convinces you that you owe your energy to anyone who demands it. It traps you in a cycle of overgiving and quiet resentment, so you stay silent when disrespected, you overextend when tired, you agree to things you hate, and then you wonder why you feel drained, anxious, and invisible. But here's the truth. The world doesn't burn you out. You burn out by abandoning yourself for too long. Seneca once warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." We waste it in apologies that weren't needed, in efforts that weren't valued, in proving ourselves to people who were never watching. And when the silence finally comes, when you're alone after giving everything, you realize how much of your life has been lived for others. That's when the conflict reaches its sharpest point. You begin to ask, who am I when I'm not who they need me to be? The Stoic path demands an answer, because peace cannot coexist with pretense. The more you fake comfort, the further you drift from calm. To protect your peace, you must confront the parts of you that fear being disliked. You must let go of the illusion that peace is maintained through constant agreement. True peace sometimes requires friction, not with others, but within yourself. You will feel guilt when you set your first boundary. You will feel fear when you finally say no. You will question yourself when you choose silence over explanation. That's normal, that's growth. The Stoics called this inner battle proherses, the struggle between what your reason knows and what your emotions want. Your emotions want to please, your reason wants to protect, and peace lives where reason wins. You don't owe everyone access to your energy. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, and you don't need to explain your peace to those committed to misunderstanding it. What you owe is the version of yourself that stays calm, disciplined, and whole. The world doesn't need your exhaustion. It needs your clarity, so when your heart feels heavy from trying to keep everyone happy, remember this: you are not responsible for their storms. Only for keeping your sea calm. That is the heart of the inner conflict, the fight between wanting to be liked and needing to be free. And freedom, as the Stoics remind us, begins not when the world understands you, but when you stop needing it to. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you stop trying to be understood, when you finally realize that peace is not something others can give you, but something you must choose to keep. This realization does not arrive in the noise. It arrives in the silence after exhaustion. When you've given too much, explained too much, cared too much, and the emptiness that follows whispers a truth you can no longer ignore. That truth is simple: not everything deserves your energy. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have within you something stronger and more divine than the things that affect you and make you dance like a puppet." You read that once and maybe nodded, but it's different when you live it, because only after years of chasing validation do you realize how it feels to be a puppet, pulled by invisible strings of expectation, guilt, and fear. The turning point begins when you decide to cut those strings, one by one. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop feeling guilty for saying no, and slowly you begin to stand taller, not out of pride, but out of peace. This is where Stoicism becomes real, because philosophy means nothing until it meets the pain of your own experience. You remember Epictetus' teaching, "No man is free who is not master of himself," and you begin to see that the mastery he spoke of was never about dominance. It was about detachment, the power to stay calm when provoked, the strength to walk away without resentment, the courage to be silent when you could win the argument. You begin to understand that real strength is invisible. It doesn't roar, it doesn't prove, it simply is. You start noticing how much peace exists in stillness, how liberating it feels to let people misunderstand you, how light your heart becomes when you stop over-explaining. You realize that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means control. Because when you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy into places that don't deserve it. At first, the world around you resists this change. People who once fed off your availability start questioning your distance. They say you've changed. And they're right, you have. You've stopped giving them power they never earned. This is where many retreat back into guilt, back into the comfort of pleasing. But the Stoic path demands you hold the line, because the moment you compromise your peace to maintain approval, you fall back into the same invisible prison you once vowed to leave. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." That was not just advice on friendship, it was guidance on energy. If someone drains your peace and you allow it, you are not being noble, you are being careless with your soul. The turning point is the death of the old self, the version of you that lived for applause, for comfort, for acceptance, and the birth of the new, the one who seeks alignment, solitude, and strength. It's not an easy transformation. There will be moments of doubt, when you sit alone and wonder if you're isolating yourself. But you'll soon see the difference between isolation and independence. Isolation drains. Independence restores. You'll begin to sense the stillness of Stoic peace, waking up early in the quiet, feeling gratitude without words, doing your work with discipline, and ending the day knowing your peace stayed intact, untouched by gossip, distraction, or chaos. This calmness doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. Your reactions no longer belong to the world. They belong to you. And when that shift happens, when you start choosing response over reaction, distance over drama, silence over noise, you step into a state of power that no one can take. That's when you truly begin to understand what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed," because harm isn't always physical. Sometimes it's emotional, the way others disturb your balance. But when you build your boundaries with wisdom, nothing penetrates the stillness of your inner walls. That's the moment your peace stops depending on people and starts depending on principle. The turning point is not loud. It is not announced. It arrives quietly like dawn after a long night, and you realize that nothing outside you ever needed to change. Only your response did. Wisdom without practice is decoration. It sounds noble, it feels inspiring, but it changes nothing. The Stoics knew this, that philosophy meant nothing if it stayed on parchment or in the mouth of a teacher. It had to be lived, breathed, tested in the ordinary days of human life. So, after the awakening, comes the practice. You've realized your peace is sacred. You've drawn your line. Now, you must live it every single day. This is where discipline becomes your quiet shield, because peace is not a one-time achievement, it's a daily maintenance. Like sweeping dust from the floor, you must keep cleaning your inner space before resentment, noise, and chaos settle again. Let's begin where all peace begins, the morning. When you wake up, your first thought shapes your direction. If you begin the day reaching for your phone, you hand your attention to the world before you've even met yourself. The Stoic practice begins with awareness. Sit for a moment in silence. Feel your breath. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private notes. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. He wasn't writing poetry, he was practicing armor. Gratitude for a Stoic is not a gentle feeling, it is protection against entitlement, frustration, and chaos. When you begin your day with gratitude, you start from abundance, not from lack. And when you start from abundance, you no longer chase validation. Next comes your interactions where boundaries are tested most. People will pull. They will demand your time, your attention, your emotions. The Stoic practice is to pause before you respond. Epictetus taught, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Every reaction you give is permission, so before you speak, ask, is this worth my peace? 9 times out of 10, it isn't. Choose silence more often. Choose distance when needed. You do not owe access to anyone who drains your strength. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They don't lock the world out. They simply let the right things in. In modern life, This practice means learning to say no with calm, not with anger, not with guilt, but with self-respect. You'll notice how difficult it feels at first, how the word no trembles in your throat. But over time, that tremble becomes stillness. You start realizing that peace feels better than pleasing. Now, reflect on your environment. The Stoics valued simplicity not as an aesthetic, but as clarity. A cluttered space mirrors a cluttered mind, so keep your surroundings minimal, clean your desk, organize your room. Let every object have meaning, purpose, or peace attached to it. That simplicity becomes a mirror of your mind. Then comes speech, the most underestimated practice of all. Seneca said, "Speech is the mirror of the mind, so guard your words as you guard your peace." Don't speak to prove, speak to add, speak less, listen more, because silence gives birth to understanding. The next layer of practice is detachment. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. When you detach, you still love, but without control. You still serve, but without expectation. You still help, but without losing yourself in the process. Every time you let go of something not meant for you, you create space for peace to return. That's why Stoicism isn't about rejecting emotion, it's about refining it. Feel fully, but hold lightly, and finally, at the end of the day, practice reflection. Before you sleep, return inward. Ask yourself, did I protect my peace today? Did I give too much energy to things I cannot control? Did I live aligned with my principles? Seneca wrote letters to himself every night, not to impress anyone, but to keep his soul accountable. You can do the same. Write, reflect, realign. Let your journal be your temple of truth. Because peace is not built in moments of grand clarity. It's built in these quiet, consistent choices. Every time you choose not to react, you protect your energy. Every time you walk away from gossip, you strengthen your boundaries. Every time you say no with calm, you affirm your worth. And every time you stay true to your values, you expand your peace. That is Stoicism in motion, not a philosophy for scholars, but a guide for warriors of the mind. And over time, as you practice these small acts of discipline, you'll notice something profound. Life doesn't stop being chaotic. But you stop being shaken by it. The storms will still come, but now you'll stand in the center, still, calm, untouchable. Because true peace isn't found, it's built, one quiet, disciplined choice at a time. You've walked through the fire. You've stood in silence while the world shouted around you. You've learned that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's sacred. Now comes the final understanding that peace isn't a destination, but a way of being. The world will always test your boundaries. It will knock at your door in the form of people who drain you, responsibilities that stretch you, and distractions that pull you from your purpose. You can't change that, but you can choose how you meet it. This is where Stoic strength reveals itself, not in force, not in noise, but in quiet endurance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That is the essence of peace, to remain unmoved while life crashes against you, to stand firm, not because you resist everything, but because you no longer attach to what doesn't belong to you. When you reach this state, you no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer chase recognition or validation. You stop explaining your silence. You stop defending your distance. You simply are. You realize that boundaries are not walls, but pathways, routes that lead you back to yourself. They don't isolate you, They protect your energy so you can love with clarity, not exhaustion. They keep your inner fire steady, not scattered. This is the peace that cannot be bought, imitated, or borrowed. It is the peace born of understanding, the kind that grows quietly when you stop trying to please everyone and start living aligned with your truth. The Stoics never spoke of peace as comfort. They spoke of peace as strength, the kind that stands firm in uncertainty, the kind that stays kind even when misunderstood, the kind that smiles, not because everything is perfect, but because nothing needs to be. In a world that glorifies noise, peace is rebellion. In a world that demands attention, silence is power. And in a world that praises excess, restraint becomes your greatest wealth. Your boundaries are the quiet proof of your maturity, they say. I know my limits, and I honor them. They say, I no longer run from solitude because I've found comfort in my own company. They say, I do not chase peace anymore, I become it. There will still be days when your energy feels drained, when your thoughts wander, when people misunderstand your distance. That's natural. Peace isn't perfection, it's practice, and on those days, return to what you've learned, return to your breath, it's your anchor. Return to your silence, it's your sanctuary. Return to your discipline, it's your armor. And remember, every act of restraint, every calm no, every moment you choose presence over distraction, that's you protecting your peace. That's you living stoicism. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And that's the quiet truth behind boundaries. They are an act of bravery. Because it takes courage to disappoint others in order to stay true to yourself. It takes strength to walk away when you are expected to please. It takes wisdom to realize that not everyone deserves access to your peace. But that's what Stoicism trains you for, to live by principle, not impulse. To move from clarity, not chaos. To remain calm even when the world burns around you. So, as you move forward, carry this understanding. You don't need to shout your worth. You don't need to explain your distance. You don't need to justify your calm. Let your peace speak for you. Let your silence be your boundary. Let your self-control be your power. And if ever you forget, remember that the strongest soul is the one that needs no audience, no validation, no applause. It simply walks through the noise with quiet eyes and steady breath, untouched, unshaken, unbothered. Because it knows something the world has forgotten, that peace is not found in the absence of problems, but in the mastery of response. And that mastery begins when you stop giving your energy away to everything that doesn't deserve it. Protect your peace, guard your boundaries, live your truth quietly, and in time you'll discover what the Stoics knew all along, that a calm mind is the highest form of strength, and a peaceful life is the greatest victory. Peace is not something you find. It's something you protect every day, with every choice. With every boundary you keep, you've learned that peace is not silence alone. It's selective silence. That boundaries are not about rejection, they are about protection, and that the calmest people are not detached from life. They are simply no longer enslaved by what disturbs them. But now comes the deeper truth: peace must be maintained, not merely achieved. Every day, something will try to enter your mind uninvited. A comment, a distraction, a person who wants more of you than they've earned. The noise never stops, it just changes form. And so, you learn not to escape the world, but to navigate it without losing yourself in it. This is the daily art of Stoicism: to remain open, yet unmoved, to stay compassionate, yet firm, to engage with life, but never be consumed by it. Marcus Aurelius said, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the foundation of all boundaries, self-mastery. Because you cannot control the actions of others, but you can control the permission you give them. You start to realize that peace does not demand isolation, it demands discipline. It's not about running away from people, it's about filtering what deserves your energy. And in that practice, you become lighter, not because the world changed, but because you did. Think of your mind as a temple. Every thought, every influence, every person who enters, leaves an impression. If you allow everyone inside without discernment, the temple becomes crowded, chaotic, and unholy. But when you guard it, when you let only truth, gratitude, and reason step through its doors, the temple remains sacred. That's what your boundaries do. They turn chaos into order, noise into clarity, exhaustion into presence. But it's not easy. There will be guilt. You will question your decisions. You will wonder if you've become too distant, too cold, too selfish. That's the old conditioning speaking. The voice that believes peace must be earned through pleasing others. But the Stoics would tell you, peace is not earned, it's chosen. And every time you choose yourself over chaos, you return closer to your natural state, calm, clear, complete. There's a kind of stillness that comes when you stop chasing after everyone's approval. A clarity that arrives when you let people misunderstand you without trying to fix it. And a power that grows when you stop reacting to every emotion that passes through. That stillness is not emptiness. It's freedom. It's the moment when the mind becomes your ally, not your enemy. It's when you finally understand what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. It's about no longer being pulled by everything you don't. It's about saying, "I will not allow this to disturb my peace," and meaning it. Every boundary you create is a declaration. I choose calm over chaos. I choose truth over comfort. I choose focus over noise, and those choices, repeated over time, become your identity. They build a foundation so strong that even when the world shakes, you remain still. People will notice it. They'll see your calm and call it distance. They'll see your silence and mistake it for pride. But you'll know the truth, that you are simply conserving what matters most, your inner equilibrium. Because when you lose your peace, you lose yourself. When you lose yourself, everything else becomes meaningless. So you hold it sacred. You guard it like a flame in the wind, steady, quiet, alive. And when you fall, because you will remember, even the Stoics stumbled. They too faced anger, fatigue, self-doubt. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations not because he was perfect, but because he was human, constantly reminding himself how to return to stillness. That's what your practice will look like, not flawless control, but faithful return. Every time life pulls you out of peace, you return. Every time someone drains your focus, you return. Every time your mind spirals, you return. Return to yourself, to that inner fortress built from wisdom, patience, and clarity. Because peace isn't about what happens around you. It's about what remains within you. It's not found in distance from the world. It's found in closeness to truth. And the truth is simple. You don't owe anyone your energy, your time, or your peace. You only owe yourself the discipline to protect it. So breathe. Let silence fill the spaces that once held noise. Let calm become your signature, not your reaction. And remember, the moment you stop defending your boundaries, you start losing your balance. Peace isn't passive. It's power held quietly. Every boundary you set is an act of self-respect. Every moment you protect your peace, you prove your freedom. There comes a moment, after the noise has faded, after the storms have passed, when you begin to understand the real meaning of peace. It was never about controlling everything around you. It was about no longer letting everything around you control you. Peace, you realize, is not a gift given by others. It's the consequence of how faithfully you guard yourself. And the boundaries you build are not walls to keep people out. They are walls to keep your soul intact. The Stoics never spoke about peace as something external. They didn't describe it as comfort, success, or approval. They spoke of it as alignment, the harmony between your reason and your actions, between your thoughts and your truth. Seneca once wrote, "No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it." He meant that the pursuit of peace through others, through validation, through control, is the very thing that steals it away. Because every time you chase peace outside of yourself, you abandon it within. In the quiet that follows understanding, something changes. You stop explaining your silence. You stop defending your calm. You stop apologizing for the space you need. You start living with yourself, not against yourself. And that, perhaps, is the greatest boundary of all, the one between who you were and who you are becoming. Because before, you lived on reaction. You were swayed by opinions, disturbed by noise, consumed by distraction. But now you see clearly, not everything deserves a response. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Not every emotion deserves your obedience. You become deliberate, like a sculptor removing what doesn't belong. Piece by piece, you shape your inner life until only essence remains. Discipline becomes beauty, stillness becomes strength, simplicity becomes peace, and in this new rhythm you begin to see that life will always test your boundaries. It will send noise disguised as urgency, people disguised as peace, opportunities disguised as distractions. But if you stay rooted in what's real, if you remember that no one can disturb your mind without your permission, then you remain untouched. That's the essence of Stoicism, not to withdraw from the world, but to walk through it as a calm observer. You stop asking the world to be easier and start asking yourself to be stronger. You stop seeking comfort and start seeking clarity. You stop living to please and start living to be. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That's what peace through boundaries really means. It's not about talk. It's about practice. It's about embodying calm so deeply that it becomes your presence. You stop performing for the world and begin living as yourself, unshaken. You no longer bend to fit in, you stand still and let the noise flow around you. Because once you know the value of your inner world, you stop selling it cheaply. You understand that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your time, your heart. You learn that kindness without wisdom becomes self-destruction, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back, not in anger, but in clarity. Peace, then, becomes your quiet rebellion. Your calm becomes your armor. Your stillness becomes your strength. People who live without boundaries are like open gates in a storm, but you've learned to close the gates, not to hide, but to preserve the garden within. And as you stand there, surrounded by calm, detached from chaos, you finally understand what the Stoics meant when they said, "To be calm is the highest achievement of the self." Because calm is not the absence of movement, it is the mastery of it. You will still feel pain, you will still face conflict. You will still be tested, but you will no longer be consumed. You will move through life as the Stoics did, with quiet power, disciplined emotion, and the peace that comes from knowing yourself. The world will try to pull you back into noise, but now you'll smile gently and remember, you don't need to win every argument. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to prove anything. All you need to do is protect your peace. Because peace is not passive, it is active restraint, it is conscious silence, it is wisdom in motion. So walk through life like a mountain, still, grounded, unmoved by passing winds. Speak less, listen more. Give without losing yourself, love without surrendering your peace. And when people ask why you've become so calm, you'll simply say, I learned to stop fighting what doesn't deserve my energy. Peace is not the absence of noise. It's the discipline to remain still. Within it, guard it like breath, leave from it like truth.